You're listening to ThunderQuack Podcast Network.
Hello there, and welcome back to Force Perspectives. I am your host, Michael Cohen, and joining me, as always, renewed for a second season, Joe Hogan.
Oh, thank you. If you were going to say something snarky, I was going to say, Michael, I'm going to cancel you if you keep that up.
Listen, hey, Disney, you're taking cancel culture a little too far.
Yeah.
With this. It's not it, Bob. That's not what we mean. That's not what it means. That's not what it means. This was supposed to be our skeleton crew. Let's get really excited for the upcoming Star Wars super hype episode. What with the trailer and everything, and we are going to talk about it. We are going to get into it, but I think before we can get into what's coming next, we got to sort of set the stage a little bit and talk about the news that came earlier this week. That's really just generally bumming everybody out. I guess it was Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
I think it was Deadline reported it first that in the classic Deadline fashion, which is with absolutely no class or tact whatsoever, that the Acolyte is not returning for a second season. Now, the language that gets used, it's very interesting, the language that gets used, because Obi-Wan Kenobi is currently not returning for a second season either. Andor was originally announced as a 5-season show and is 2 seasons, but nobody refers to that as a canceling. That's just that they just switched it up, right? The Book of Boba Fett never got announced as being canceled, right? But the Acolyte does get announced everywhere as having been canceled, and the reason for that is that it just generates clicks, right? It's clickbait of the worst kind, because it's the very insidious sort of like, oh, we don't really think of that as clickbait. It's not, you know, top 5 shows that have been canceled, number 1 will shock you, right? Like, that's what we think of as like a clickbait type of title. But yeah, by putting canceled, they are very specifically signaling the Acolyte hate groups, and getting lots of clicks off of them. This is a huge bummer. This is a huge disappointment. Obviously, Joe and I are massive fans of the Acolyte, if that hasn't been evidenced by, the last few episodes. I mean, our entire,
months.
2 months of covering the show. And then last week's episode, I mean, like, coming off of that, where we determined fairly scientifically, I think, that the lightsaber tools in the Acolyte are among the absolute best that have been produced in any of these television shows, of which there have been a lot. So this is I don't know, it just sucks. It's just sucky news. It sucks. It's not good. It's not happy. It really ruined my Tuesday, I'll tell you that. Like it really ruined my Tuesday. So yeah, or maybe it was even Monday. Was it Monday? Maybe it was Monday.
If it was Monday, I think it was late Monday.
Yeah, it was late Monday. It was.
I feel like I saw it just before I went to bed on Monday, and then woke up and everybody was talking about it.
I'm pretty sure it was Monday, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. So it's no good. It's no good.
So let me ask you, because
Yeah.
from what I'm understanding, I mean, they didn't give a reason or anything, but it looks like the numbers are the lowest. Like, it's the lowest viewership of any of the Star Wars shows, and it was super expensive to make. So I I understand if they're not getting the views and they're spending the money. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I understand being like, okay, well, this was a risk and it didn't pay off. Um, like, I get it. Like, I really understand. But
Yeah.
like, do you feel like something like this show, despite that, as a business, deserved another chance to like grow viewership? Or do you feel like logically, like, okay,
Yeah.
they made a difficult choice? Because from what I understand, they were actually soft preparing season 2 already. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't have the official green light, but it did have enough of a green light to be like, okay, well, let's get started.
Yeah.
um do you feel like it was the correct choice, removing your emotional attachment and enjoyment of season 1?
Yeah. No, I don't. I don't. And what I will point to is the just the current state of the industry in general, but even specifically within Disney itself, and this this inability to stick with it and play the long game, I in favor of short term, you know, very like instant reward sort of mentality. Now, this isn't isolated to entertainment either. This is very much in the gaming industry as well, like
Hmm.
video games. It's in software development. It's in every aspect of tech essentially. And as a matter of fact, that's kind of where it has come from. Is the tech mentality of um, like agile development processes and lean strategy, right? Like lean business strategy. So
Hmm.
the idea behind that, for people who don't know, because I'm talking business terms right now, this is where every once in a while it's like, oh, I actually do have quite a bit of professional experience and know what I'm talking about. So this is like, there's a is the book called Lean Startup? I think it's called Lean Startup, where that sort of created a lot of this ideology, this mentality, and I think it's probably about 10 years ago now. And it's really permeated. It started in tech. It started specifically with software development, but I think has really like expanded out into every aspect of corporate sort of culture is a tough word because it doesn't really feel very cultured, but I guess it is like it's a corporate culture thing, and it's really like it's in CEO culture specifically, the idea of the lean startup. And even if you're not a startup, everybody's trying to apply lean principles and agile to their methodologies. So what lean startup sort of got to, and makes a lot of sense actually. I mean, it's like, this is not a condemnation of that business model, because I actually think that if you are a startup, that this is like required reading. But the mentality behind that book was that, in the market, in the ecosystem today, with the internet and sort of the instantaneous communication with your customer base, whether that's business to business or business to consumer, direct to consumer, whatever it is, right? um it doesn't really matter. Like things can move so quickly that before you spend a bunch of money developing something, you get what's called an MVP, a minimum viable product, out into the market in order to test your assumption that there's a desire for this product, right? So what that means in tech development, I specifically with software, is like, hey, let's not worry too much about quality of life stuff. Let's not worry too much about design. Let's not worry too much about, the really fancy things. We will iterate, right? And using this is where things fall apart, because the follow up is the most important component of the lean startup, and with agile development, it's an iterative process, right? So the idea here is that it's like, okay, let's say we're building an app, a calendar to coordinate your family, right? So it's an app that will be on everybody's phone in the family, and we all have like a family account that's all linked together. And when I put an appointment on the calendar, it shows up on somebody else's calendar, and everybody's all synced so that we all know what we're doing, right? I There are 1,000,010 ideas to throw into that app, right? There's all sorts of stuff, right? Like, oh well, we could also, what about email alerts, and what about, like, oh, what about for, like, kids, you could put a chore list in there, and should we put a grocery list inside of that family calendar app? And it's like, you can really quickly get out of control with all of these crazy things that are like value enhancing aspects to your piece of software, right, to your app. But what we need to do first is find out if anybody cares about the base product, right? So the MVP on that is, it's a calendar. It has an account system. That account system can be shared across, multiple members of a family, like multiple users, that are all synced together. Those are the things that we have to make sure are in this app in order to launch it, in order to test if anybody even cares, right? So that's what you would do, is you would then build towards that as your I mean, in this instance, probably even a beta, not even a V1, right? But like as a beta product, and you would build that as quickly as possible. Doesn't matter what it looks like in the back end. It doesn't matter how sloppy it is. Right now, we just need to find out, is this something that people are going to give us money for, right? And that might mean investors, it might mean consumers, right? So that's the idea behind the lean startup. And then agile development process is a software development process that supports lean. So agile, what most people are used to in project management, is something called waterfall, which is pretty self-explanatory. It makes a lot of sense, right? You start with your sort of conceptual phase, right? What's our idea? And then you move on to design, right? And you go, okay, well, what's it going to look like? And then you move into development. How does it work, right? And then we launch the product. So you have those stages, and it waterfalls, it cascades from one stage to the next stage to the next stage. In agile, that you remove that staging process, and it's like, okay, we're going to start conceptualizing. As we conceptualize, designers start designing the stuff that we've conceptualized. Software developers start thinking about how we're going to architect this, and everybody goes off and starts on their tasks. And then every week you come back and you go, okay, I did this, I did this, I did this. These are the challenges that I hit. This is the thing that's blocking me. This is what I need support on. This is what I have a question about. And everybody comes in and talks about it, and supports each other. And this is like super super broad strokes, so people who developers and designers are probably going like, you're missing a blah blah. We don't have time. There's no time for all that nonsense. But just conceptually, it's like you come back and you have what are called scrum meetings, and you go over it over and over and over. So you're able to sort of, like, you don't have to wait for one stage to finish for the next to start. So that means that everybody is working all the time. And it when it works well, when it's being led by a good project manager, it can you can crank out a piece of software really really fast. um Especially when what your goal is an MVP, is that minimum viable product, right? So it's like, it doesn't matter how messy it is. It doesn't matter how many mistakes you made along the way. It's about getting it to that point. And in a way, you kind of end up doing more work but because there's not as much sort of like sitting back and thinking about it first. It's very reactive. But if you have good designers, you have good developers, and you have good project managers, then it can work really, really well. And I've been a part of processes with this that have worked really, really well. What has happened is that because it's super successful in tech, it's super successful for companies like Amazon and Apple, which is how a lot of people are going to measure success in the year 2024. Those ideologies have been carried over into other industries. And just like really broad strokes, it's not just entertainment. We see it in the healthcare industry. If you stop and you think about healthcare for 5 minutes, you will start to see that, like, okay, that's like it's been misapplied over here, right? And you can literally apply it to anything. I mean, like even the fast food industry, if you look how like it seems like every 2 weeks there's a new stupid sandwich coming out from somebody, right? And we noticed that during the pandemic, actually it was really funny. There was like the chicken sandwich wars, right? Like every company was like, oh, we've got a new chicken sandwich, new chicken sandwich, new chicken sandwich. Ours has spicy thing, ours is a pickle thing, ours is a KFC's like our chicken sandwich is a sandwich made of chicken, right? Like that was sort of that was everybody doing applying that thinking to fast food. Because of streaming, this has been applied to entertainment. It's been applied to television shows and movies. And so I think this is why we're seeing this prevalence of 8 episode seasons, right? Don't do a full 24, right? Like just 8 episodes, crank them out. If you really think about it, The Mandalorian has one season. It really has one
Yeah.
full television season at this point because it has 3 seasons of 8. And then if you want to include Book of Boba Fett, like it's season 3 is kind of the first part of season 2 of The Mandalorian. And if you look at the way that it's actually structured, like if you really, really look at it, you can start to see that that's the case. You can actually start to see that like this is one of the problems, honestly, is that it has been structured this way and that it's been broken up this way, and that we are being treated as though 8 episodes or 10 episodes or 6 episodes is a full season of television rather than a long movie, right? But the biggest problem with this is that it's like the purpose, and this all comes from Netflix or initially, right? The purpose is crank it out, get it on the app, right? Watch the metrics, analytics, blah blah blah. If it's not doing, these numbers within this time frame, then shit can the whole thing, right? Now, there are going to be things that no matter what you do, no matter how bad the process is, no matter how bad the system is, you're going to have artists and creatives who come in and crush it regardless. And that's what Stranger Things did, right?
Mm.
And Stranger Things, when you look at it, is actually the exception that proves the rule and not the evidence that proves out the experiment, which is what Netflix would have you believe, right? Is that like, well, look at Stranger Things. This is a cultural phenomenon, right? Walk into a hot topic. Maybe not so much these days, but like at the height of it, right? Seasons 1, 2, going into season 3, like the merch was everywhere. I mean, there are Ninja Turtle Stranger Things crossover toys, there's Stranger Things Lego sets, there you can get a hat, you can get a shirt, you can get a backpack, you can everybody dressed as Elle for Halloween one year, right? And that's what we're after. Like that's that when creatives are making art, that's what you want. You want cultural penetration, right? Like you want to get into the psyche of everybody on the planet, or as many people as possible, right? That's always the
Mm.
goal. Star Wars, from a brand perspective, occupies that space. It already does. But the reason it occupies that space is because with the first 3 films, with 4, 5, and 6, George had a clear vision, uh, things to say, and creative control, ultimately, right? And so that first movie comes out and is such a phenomenon, not because of really anything other than the fact that George knew what he wanted and got it on screen, and it almost cost him his life, right? Like it literally almost killed him. Like he had a nervous breakdown, he had panic attacks and anxiety. Like it literally almost killed the guy in order to achieve what's on screen, which is why in any ranking, like it's like we can talk over and over about which one's our favorite, which one's the best quality wise, but which Star Wars movie is unequivocally objectively the best Star Wars movie. It's A New Hope, right? Because when you account for everything, you account for every single aspect of making that film and the fact that it exists and everything that it has spawned, it's a miracle that we got it. And it's a miracle that we got more, because it's a miracle that he made it out of that thing alive in order to tell more stories, right? But even with the prequels and then with the Clone Wars, love it or hate it, take it or leave it, I don't give a fuck. George made the shit that he wanted to make, right?
Mm.
And so I can very easily stand in a room full of Phantom Menace haters and proudly, defiantly tell them that they're wrong. Because I can show you within the Phantom Menace, even within Attack of the Clones, and definitely in Revenge of the Sith, where it's like, there's good stuff here, guys. There's good stuff. And is all of it executed perfectly? No. But is the baby worth throwing out with the bathwater on this one? Absolutely not. Like, there is so much about the prequels that is worth standing and fighting for. And Clone Wars goes even farther than that, and supports all of it, and like viewed as a sort of as a whole, that era, the Clone Wars elevates all of it into the same status as the original trilogy, as far as I'm concerned. When we get into the Disney stuff, you guys know I am not one of the like, oh, Disney ruined Star Wars. I don't. We literally just talked about it last week on the episode. It was like, hey, all of these lightsaber duels, all of these fights that we just talked about, that we ranked in this list, this is all Disney stuff, and it's all rad. And if anybody says Disney ruined Star Wars, show them this list and go, really, really, like show them that top 10, and like, you like that, you don't even need to argue. You just go, no, look at this. Disney has not ruined Star Wars. So that's not what I'm saying by any stretch of the imagination. There has been so much great content since Disney bought Star Wars. In some instances, there's a little bit too much content, and I will start to agree, which has not really been my stance of the like, hey, like maybe we need to sort of like ease up a little bit and worry a little bit more about quality over quantity. I think that should always be the case across the board, whether it's Marvel or Star Wars, DC, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles. I don't care, right? It's like we should always be focused on quality, but I think where people are very quick, it's like the, oh, this is bad writing, and then you say like, what do you mean it's bad writing, and then they can't support their argument. The quality over quantity thing is another one of those, and it's the thing that Bob Iger loves to come out and say to everybody, oh, we're focusing on quality over quantity, and then you wait 6 months and it's like they announce 4 new shows, right? Quality over quantity it is difficult to nail down exactly how you go about that, but from my perspective, it's the same way you go about anything that's a corporate endeavor, right? Because the corporate structure, specifically publicly traded companies, it is designed as a like consumption monster, right? Um, like the whole purpose of a corporation, again, specifically a publicly traded one, is to generate revenue, not even actually revenue, but to generate value for shareholders, right? We've talked about this on Off the Record very recently. um the purpose, or maybe it was the ThunderQuack podcast, actually, so everybody can go back and listen to it. I When they announced that Ninja Turtles Last Ronin project, and I went on my rant about, like, the whole purpose of this is just stock number go up. That's it, right? And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about this stuff. That's the whole purpose of a corporation, with a board of directors and shareholders and all of that stuff. It's like, recently I've been really annoyed by all of the because there's been one going around about, like, oh, if you woke up tomorrow and you were the CEO of Disney, what would you change? Right? Or what project would you immediately greenlight? And it drives me nuts, because it's like, that's absolutely not how it works. a, a CEO is not a god king. They are not a genie. You do not get 3 wishes when you become the CEO and they are just suddenly made reality. Bob Iger has a lot of things to worry about. This isn't defending him. This is just trying to explain the reality of what his job is, because I think that some people think that Bob Iger sits at a desk with people walking up to him like it's a fucking episode of Shark Tank. Sorry, I have to, like, pause there, because it's called Dragon's Den in Canada, and it came from Canada first, so it's existed way longer up here as Dragon's Den. But you guys call it Shark Tank because you're Americans, and it's dumb. Dragon's Den's a way cooler name. But anyways,
to be fair, we know of both. Like,
okay.
you say Dragon's Den, people know what you're
Well,
talking about.
13% of Americans think that Canadians live in igloos, so,
Okay,
like,
true.
let's not assume anything.
Wait, what are you talking? You guys don't?
Exactly. I So, like, I think that is, like, sort of the prevailing mindset, is that Bob Iger is sitting in a throne, or he's like the emperor on the Death Star, and people come to him and they go, "Oh, we'd like to make another season of The Acolyte," and he goes thumbs up or thumbs down, like he's fucking Joaquin Phoenix, right? I'm just mixing all of my movie metaphors, but you guys get the picture, I hope, fairly clearly. That's not how it works at all. Bob Iger's job is not actually to approve or disapprove any of these projects. There are, like, 3 layers between him and the people who are making those decisions. I would actually go ahead and say that, like, Kathleen Kennedy's probably not even making most of these decisions, right? Kathleen Kennedy is approving the decisions that are being made. Bob Iger is then sitting with, like, Kathleen Kennedy and Kevin Feige and a handful of other people, with other important divisions around Disney, and making decisions about these things. But Bob Iger's job is to worry first and foremost. First and foremost, are you guys listening? Stop what you're doing. Pull over the car, okay? Put down the dishes. Pause your workout for a second, because I want everybody to hear this super clear. Bob Iger's job, first and foremost, is to keep the shareholders happy. That's his job. Everything that he does in his job is to facilitate that end. Full stop. That's the job of a CEO. It is not the CEO's job to make sure that the stuff is good. It's not the CEO's job to make value judgments on things that have been produced. It's not. They are definitely part of those conversations, but they are not a singular entity that's going, like, yes or no, yay or nay, right? Even president of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, that is not her job, right? There are dozens of people below them that are making those calls, that are determining those things. Now, a lot of the time, what they have to do in order to, get that approval from Kathleen Kennedy or from Bob Iger or Kevin Feige or whoever it is, David Zaslav at Warner Brothers, right? Warner Discovery, Omni Global Consumer Megacorp, right? whatever they're calling themselves these days. They have to go in with metrics. They have to go in with analytics and data, because that's how everybody makes decisions nowadays. Nobody makes decisions based on gut or instinct. They're all making it based on analytics and data. This all ties back into that lean startup stuff, right? Which is why I went into that. That's where that has come from. And streaming platforms, because they are apps, whether you're using it through your TV, your PlayStation, your Xbox, your iPhone, your, I don't know, do Android phones go on the internet? I don't know. But whatever device you're using, in order to access Disney Plus, it's an app, and that app is a piece of software, and that software has analytics and metrics and key performance indicators, which we shortened to KPIs. It's one of those things. I think people came up with KPI first, and then key performance indicator, figured it out, sort of second, business jargon. Those are the things that are being taken to Bob Iger, and then Bob Iger is approving or disapproving of recommendations, right? That's the way it works in corporate. It's not the way that artistic endeavors should be approached. So all of that is to say that, like, the problem here, the problem with Disney, the problem with Lucasfilm at the moment, is that neither company really has anything to say, right? When George was in charge of Lucasfilm, he had something to say, and it shifted. It was not consistent, right? There are elements of it that are consistent. This is one of the things that I do professionally, right? Like, this is I actually very recently have gotten paid quite a bit of money just to have an opinion on this sort of thing, as a consulting job. And I this is what brands are made of, right? Now, a lot of companies screw this up. Disney and Lucasfilm are currently in that house. They are screwing this up. They have corporate ideals that don't match their actions, right? If you went and you looked at the vision for Disney, or you looked at the vision or mission statement for Lucasfilm, you would see all sorts of language about creating innovative solutions for entertainment, blah blah blah, product, yada yada yada. And it would be a lot of stuff about, like, creating magic and dreams and all of that sort of thing, right? What they're doing right now is chasing profit. That is actually the core ideology, and it's really frustrating. It's really upsetting, because it was not Bob Iger's core ideology before he stepped down. He actually, like love him or hate him, I don't really care. I look at what he did with Disney when he took over. I believe Eisner was the one who had it before him. I don't think that there was anybody in between the two of them. But when Iger took over, it killed a bunch of great projects, but at the same time, what we ended up with, I that's essentially the beginning of the acquisition period for Disney, of, like, getting first Marvel, and then Star Wars, and then Fox, and so now all of these things are under one roof. But within that, like there's a lot of championing of creative projects, and there's a lot of really great stuff that has come out of it as a result. I mean, look at what the MCU has accomplished. Look at I mean, like again, love it or hate, I don't really care, because I'm looking objectively at this stuff. Look at Avatar and how much money that has made. And how much people love the theme park experiences, and sort of these other things that have been created as a result. And I don't know, Iger's not super responsible for a lot of that, but I mean, like, bringing Avatar into Disney parks was under Iger. So So, you know, you can look at that and you go, because I actually think like that was one of that and the X-Men were, I think, the two motivating factors behind that acquisition of 20th Century Fox. Everything else was just, as you can see by the way that they've treated other things, everything else was like, yeah, I guess. Right? It's like, this all comes with it, right? Like, in order to acquire those two things, we're gonna have to put up with all of this other stuff, and now we're responsible for the Simpsons for some reason, and Family Guy, right? Like, which is just ridiculous to think about. But I there was previously a mentality of like, we're gonna put out good stuff, and by putting out good stuff, we're gonna, you know, create fandoms and communities, and that's gonna generate revenue. And that's the way that it should be approached, right? Is like, let's make awesome things, and then by virtue of making awesome things, we will make money, right? And I don't care what you're making. I don't care if you're a logo designer like I am, or if you are making, you know, cars. It makes no difference. That mentality should always be the mentality. And the way that you make awesome things is by having a core ideology behind it, and something to say with that product, right? It might be, here's a really great example that's outside of entertainment. I buy Toyota cars, and like, all and at this point where I'm at right now with Toyota, the company that it is, that's not going to change. I have a RAV4 and I fucking love it, and Crystal has a Prius Prime, and she loves that. And one of the main reasons why we love our cars is because they're reliable first and foremost, and they are incredibly safe vehicles, right? Like, they have the highest safety ratings of any vehicles. I think Volvo is like neck and neck with them, but Volvo's a luxury brand, so it's like, if you have to choose between the two, if safety is one of your main concerns, you got kids and you're loading them in the car and driving them all over the place, and you're on the road statistically at a rate that eventually you're going to be in a car accident, be in a car that's going to keep you safe, right? So that's what I'm thinking about when I'm making that purchase, and that is something that Toyota is putting, you know, front and center in the way that they not just market their product, because that's a part of it, but in literally in the, like, the conception of it, and like it is one of the earliest things that they are thinking about is safety. And so they make a good product, and so I'm happy to spend my money with them, right? Where we have the problem with Disney and Lucasfilm right now, individually and as a partner creating content, is that, like, neither one of them has anything to say with the products that they're making, right? Disney as a corporation is just chasing the dragon of short-term profit, and that has, like, since the pandemic, since the parks had to close, and you know, movie theaters have been struggling and all of that stuff, they are floundering, and you can look at their stock price and you can see it, and every once in a while it starts to come back, and then it has another dive, and then it has to build back, and then another dive, and it has to build back. And it's definitely higher than it was at sort of its lowest point. I wish that I had bought a bunch of stock in 2020, but like, they've been struggling, and they're nowhere near the high that they were in 2019 with something like Endgame, right? And they're you know, Iger left, Chapek took over. Chapek was a financial guy, and that really, like, undermined everything, because he came in and he was just about efficiencies and cutting things and all of that stuff. Um and so they had to boot him and bring Iger back in. That's my perfect example of what I was saying before about, like, these guys are not like god kings that can do whatever they want. Chapek came in and made a bunch of changes, and it immediately resulted in a bunch of really, really bad stuff and really, really poor revenue, and they got rid of him so fast and brought Bob Iger back in, like, forced him out. And now Iger is walking around talking about trying to find his replacement because he doesn't want to do the job anymore. I don't blame him. It sucks. It's not a good job. If I woke up tomorrow as the CEO of Disney, I would immediately start looking for my replacement as well. Because I don't want to do that. It sounds like an awful life. I mean, like, you're super, super rich, but the stress of all of I couldn't do it because I have moral fortitude. So like that moral fortitude would be put to the test. I don't think that Bob Iger has as much moral fortitude as I do because he doesn't seem to particularly care about the people under him, unless they are producing and generating revenue, right? And then he cares. But yeah, I if I was going to wake up as the CEO of any company tomorrow, I would want it to be Nintendo because I feel like I would be a good match for Nintendo. We've talked about that a bunch, right? Um, the way that Iwata did things back in the day, and that they have continued that mentality and that's still part of their ethos. But that's a perfect counterpoint. That's a perfect counterexample is that Nintendo, in the midst of everybody else in the video game industry, laying everybody off, canceling projects, and just absolutely fucking over that entire industry, right? Like this year has been mediocre at best for releases. Like there have been a couple of good games, but when you compare it to like last year where it was like holy shit, and that was a direct result. 2023, that window was the result of the pandemic, right, of 2020, and everybody sort of like doubling down on gaming and all of that sort of stuff. And then in 2021 and 2022 we started to see this like tightening of the belt and that sort of thing because of the actual financial ramifications of the pandemic, right? So now in 2024 and next year we're seeing that like there's not really a lot of great games coming out. In the midst of that, you've got everybody just all they're putting out is like is sequels and like surefire sort of like tried and tested things. But then you've got Nintendo over there, and they're like, yeah, yes, everything I'm about to talk about is a sequel, but they're all taking massive risks, right? This Zelda game that's coming out in a couple of weeks is a massive risk, right? Like they are putting Zelda herself front and center for that game. And that's a huge swing for Nintendo. It's a swing that we've all been asking them to make as fans for a long time, but fans aren't the entire audience, and I think people need to understand that, right? We account for a small percentage. If you look at the statistics of early adoption, right? Again, this is going into software development because that's where I've spent most of my career, is in software development. So that's the stuff that I look at. If you look at the idea of an early adopter, it accounts for, I think it's like the top 1 to 3% of the total lifetime consumers of a product, right? Like we have like the early adopters who are the people who are going to be in no matter what. They're there for the excitement of new tech, new whatever, right? And then you've got like the people who are going to like jump on soon after that because they like which we usually sort of refer to as like trendsetters, right? That's going to be a bigger chunk, 5 to 10%. And then you're going to start to get the rest of the market. So where this is where the majority of your money is going to come, which is like the sort of general public, which is like 40 to 60% of your consumer base, depending on what industry you're in and what type of product you sell, right? And then you filling out the rest of that, you have like your latecomers and your stragglers, right? Who like, but that main chunk, those people need to know that something is good before they'll jump into it. They're not going to pre-order it. They're not going to talk about it before it is released, all of that sort of thing, right? So we are in the early adopter when it comes to something like Star Wars. We're in that early adopter sort of here we are. We're going to talk about Skeleton Crew in a minute. I think probably like we're in no matter what. They've already sold the product to us, so actually they don't care. They shouldn't care about what we have to say. This again, from a business standpoint, I'm not talking about like in reality, but like we are a non-concern because it doesn't matter that they canceled the Acolyte. We're still going to watch Skeleton Crew. It doesn't matter what happens with Skeleton Crew. We're still going to watch the next season of Ahsoka. We're still going to watch whatever the next animated project is. We're still going to continue to consume Star Wars as a product. And there's no, like, listen, yes, there are some of you out there I know that are going to be hurt enough by this that you're going to swear off of Star Wars. I also know that some of you that are going to do that are going to come back the second that they make something that appeals to you again, because that's exactly what we saw with the Acolyte. It's what's so disheartening about its cancellation is that a bunch of people who were broken literally by Rise of Skywalker and left Star Wars for the last few years came back because the Acolyte delivered on a bunch of the stuff that The Last Jedi promised, right? It delivered to an audience that is sorely underserved in the Star Wars community, and so it being canceled sends a signal that that community is not particularly wanted by Star Wars. This is where things fall apart, though, right? Is that, like, well, how does Disney know that? The viewership numbers are one part of it, but that's a shitty thing to look at because you're only giving it 8 episodes. You're only marketing it to these segments. You're not doing a particularly good job of getting new people into it. And then the other thing that they're going to measure by is merch sales, right? How many toys is this selling? How many Lego sets? How many t-shirts and hats and blah, blah, blah. Well, they didn't do any of that for the Acolyte, right? Hasbro did a wave. And it's better than they've done with other things recently. Like certainly, Book of Boba Fett, when it came out, did not have toys immediately to support it. The Acolyte did, so that's great. But 6 action figures that are like, what are they down there? $35 a piece. And I think that they're like $45 to $50 a piece up here. It's like, who are that audience is very narrow, guys. Like, who are you serving with that? We need $10 action figures if you want to see like how dedicated people are. That's where like Funko with their garbage has sort of come in and filled the gap that Hasbro has left. And that sucks because the Funko products are not what I would consider high quality. But and because of licensing stuff, they have to be bobbleheads, which sucks for all of the Marvel and Star Wars stuff. But it becomes a non thing with something like Acolyte or something like Obi-Wan Kenobi, or like these ones that have been considered not successes, and it's like, well, you guys didn't support them. And then beyond that, this online hate shit and these campaigns that come out, the fucking review bombing, all of that, and Disney just sits back and goes, and it's like, you should be actively countering this stuff, right? It's a lot like politics, and it's like, it's been nuts to watch over the last really like 3 cycles in American politics, how the Democrats have just like rolled over and let the Republicans, and I wouldn't even, like, I'm so hesitant to even say Republicans, because it's like the Republican Party has been taken over by these ridiculous zealots, right? And it's become just a complete gong show. But the Democratic Party has just like rolled over for the last 3 cycles and let them do it. It feels like this one they're fighting back. I mean, like, the DNC is happening right now, so it's going to feel like that in this immediate moment. But Obama made a dick joke about Trump on stage at the DMC the other night, so it feels like they're starting to fight back. Disney, a lot of people actually in the last day have been like, hey, where's this energy? And like posting the Ewan McGregor video that he recorded when oh my god, her name just fell out of my head, that played Riva.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't remember actor names.
When she was getting all the hate online or whatever, and he went and recorded a video, and then like Star Wars social media like pushed it out and did all that. This gets at the core of what I'm talking about with the problem with Lucasfilm and Star Wars right now. That video went out because Ewan was pissed. Not because Star Wars was pissed. Not because Lucasfilm as a company was pissed at the response to this character, to Reva in Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? And the racism and the misogyny and all of that, right? And I can say that pretty unequivocally because they should be responding to the hate that Amandla Stenberg is getting right now in the exact same way, right? Like that should there should be a video denouncing that hate and saying that there's no place for that in Star Wars and all of that. And there's not. They essentially, like, Lucasfilm hasn't responded at all. I think maybe there was a tweet at some point about Star Wars is for everyone. That's their favorite, non-statement for them to make. Star Wars is for everyone. Specifically this one segment that we would really like to capture that is made up largely by the people who are perpetrating these things online, and that's actually the demographic that Disney has decided that this product belongs to. So don't upset them any more than we already have. Put out a bunch of Darth Vader merch this year, please. Like, you can look at the corporate decisions and see that it's very clear what motivates those corporate decisions. But then every once in a while we get this little bit that gives us hope, and it's often coming from the creatives or the artists, right? So, like, Ewan was pissed that people were treating his castmates this way, and so he recorded a video and sent it to Lucasfilm and said, "Hey, publish this." Right? Like, that's what happened there. Guaranteed. And that's Ewan McGregor. So, like, he's able to do that. He's Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's Ewan. He's an actor outside of that role, and a person in the industry outside of that role with enough pull to get them to do that. It hasn't happened with the Acolyte. And it's because, like, that was not an edict from Lucasfilm, because Lucasfilm doesn't give a fuck, because Lucasfilm right now is concerned with profit. They're concerned with revenue. They're concerned with these metrics. They're looking at Nielsen ratings, and they're looking at Disney Plus metrics, and they're looking at that stuff. And they are absolutely looking at Rotten Tomatoes review bombing and taking it seriously in the wrong way, right? Like, they're looking at that and going like, oh, we have a problem here. And they're not addressing the fact that the problem is that review bombing is bullshit. They're going like, every one of these review bombs account, like, what that means to them, it doesn't mean the same thing to us, because we look at it and we go, these people are not Star Wars fans. These people are assholes. These people are racist and misogynist and bigots, and they really don't deserve a seat at the table. But what they're seeing is lost dollars, right? They look at every single one of those review bombs, every single instance of that, and they go, that's a person that we could have gotten money out of. How do we recapture that revenue? Right? Because they're focused on infinite growth, because that's where we're at. Late stage capitalism. Everything is about infinite growth, right? So as a result, we are stuck in this loop of, like, a product comes out, The Last Jedi, because they found a creative that, like, has a clear vision and has something to say. And, like, I don't care if you like The Last Jedi. It doesn't matter to me if you do. You cannot argue with me that Rian Johnson had like a very clear message that he wanted to communicate with that film. You don't have to agree with what the message is, or not. We should all agree on what messages are contained in that, but, like, you don't have to agree with that being the message of Star Wars. I don't care if you do. Rian Johnson had a specific thing that he wanted to communicate with his film, right? And so he did that, and it connected very deeply with a lot of us, and it alienated a bunch of people. and that is what it is, right? And so you get that, you get the backlash, and then you get Lucasfilm going like, how do we fix this? And then you get a new season of the Clone Wars, right? Like you get them going back and finishing Clone Wars. That the hate for The Last Jedi is absolutely required in order for us to get the end of Clone Wars. And I I hate that we live in that world. I wish that the end of Clone Wars was good enough on its own that Lucasfilm looked at it and went, we really need to let this story conclude. There are stories here worth telling. Let Dave finish his thing, right? Um, but absolutely, the success of The Mandalorian combined with the backlash against The Last Jedi and subsequently the backlash that Rise of Skywalker received. Now, Rise of Skywalker received backlash because it's a poor product, right? So it's like you get people from both sides saying that they don't like Rise of Skywalker. And the great thing is that like people like me will be like, well, I don't like Rise of Skywalker because it completely disregards The Last Jedi. And then you'll get people on the other side who are like, I don't like The Rise of Skywalker because it's woke garbage. Right, and it's like it's still about Rey, and it's like, and they introduce new black characters, and like right, like the racists and misogynists are still mad about the same things that they were mad about with the other two. So they really didn't win with Rise of Skywalker. But then you see that like, okay, we're gonna go back, we're gonna finish Clone Wars because Clone Wars is gonna tie directly into these stories that we're telling in The Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Ahsoka, all of this stuff, right? So put money into that. So that doesn't happen without the Last Jedi backlash, Solo subsequent failure, and then the Rise of Skywalker being poorly received, right? Like, I mean, like by the time that Rise of Skywalker was poorly received, Clone Wars was already happening. But like if you look at that timeline, it like green lighting the final season of Clone Wars is a direct response to The Last Jedi and the way that was received. Let's say critically, even though I don't think that that's accurate. So much of it was Russian bots creating this atmosphere, right? Which they continue to do, by the way. And most of the political upheaval and the sort of like discordant world that we're living in right now is a direct result of, I don't think just Russia. I think Russia is like the primary source of a lot of this stuff. I think China's probably doing a fair bit of it as well with these, virtual phone farm things, and not that that's not happening in North America as well, but a lot of the bullshit that we hear online is just that. It is absolute utter bullshit. It's not even real. It's not real. These people don't exist. The number of times that I have tweeted something about the Acolyte and gotten so many like retweets, and like I've had a lot of really, really like for my account viral tweets off of the Acolyte, and the virality of it is positive. The virality of it is people being like, fuck yeah, I love this show, right? um and then inevitably you get the chuds coming in with their responses, and I see one of two things. And Sith deal in absolutes, but I'm going to deal in absolutes with this one. I see there are literally two different types of responses, negative responses. There are the bot responses that have clearly been set up to just auto AI generate, some fucking vitriolic response, right? And then there are the idiots who believe those things and then just spew out the same talking points.
Mm.
Those are the two types of responses. Like that is literally it. And so much like you can tell because you go in and you look at the account, and the account has existed for less than 2 years, and it has less than 100 followers, and it has 15 tweets, and they're all the same nonsense, right? And like it takes 2 seconds to look at these accounts and go like, this is not a real account. This is not a real account in one way or another. Either it is literally a bot that has been created by some, malefactor of some kind, whether it's a the government trying to fuck with American politics through Star Wars, or just, again, 4chan chuds making bots in order to further their own personal ideologies, right? But it takes no time at all to suss these guys out and look at them and go like, this is not real. But then you have people who think that it's real and they don't look into it because of confirmation bias. It's like, well, you're saying the thing that I already believe, and so they just like, they go, see, everybody hates this, and then unfortunately that ends up affecting that. When we're talking about those consumer bases, right, that middle 40 to 60% is very easily motivated by this nonsense that happens online, because it's literally how the model works, right? Like the early adopters are the first ones in, and then you have trendsetters that come in after that. They are the ones who are going to be your evangelists. Now, those evangelists are either going to be positive or negative, right? But whatever they're evangelizing, what evangelizing is a positive way to say it, but let's say like proselytizing as a more neutral way of saying it. Whatever they're getting up on their soapbox and spewing through their megaphone, whether it's us going like the Acolyte's fucking awesome, or it's these bots and assholes going like, oh, woke garbage, right? That middle 40 to 60%, the people that actually matter when it comes to viewership numbers and revenue generation, they are listening to that conversation and they're making their decision based off that conversation. So as long as the right wing component of it can be louder than us, they're gonna win every time, right? Like that's what's gonna happen. And unfortunately, the system that we're in right now with social media is that the algorithms are based on engagement, and engagement is fueled by hate. So it just like it's a recursive cycle that's redundant, but you guys get what I'm saying. Like it is, it's a closed loop that feeds itself, right? Like it the louder these guys get, the more emboldened they are to do whatever it takes to make their point win. They will cross lines that we won't, right? Because you and I are fully capable. You and I are smart, tech savvy individuals. Either one of us is completely capable of creating a bot farm to generate positive reviews for the Acolyte. Why haven't we done that? Why wouldn't we do that? Right? And it's because there's a moral line there that neither one of us wants to cross. But these guys have no problem with that. And that's sort of like this is all thematic to Star Wars, because that's exactly what George talks about. That is the dark side. Quicker, easier, more seductive. Right? Quicker to join you in a fight. It's the easy path. It's lazy, it's sloppy, it's immoral. And these guys have absolutely fully, and I say guys, usually I use guys as a more gender neutral term, but in this instance, I mean, like, I think that we're looking at mostly male perpetrators of this nonsense, right? They cross those lines all the time. They actually like live on the other side of that line. They don't cross back onto our side, right? Like, and some of them, I mean, like 4chan it thrives on this stuff, right? Like 4chan started as a place to talk about anime and, weeaboo content, right? But it very quickly became this really toxic environment that breeds this sort of vitriol and hatred. And I am firmly of the belief that it's because it has been manipulated in that way. These communities have been manipulated by outside factors, and by people seeking to do harm for their own benefit. and there's science to support this stuff. Like there are people who've done studies and there's data to support this stuff. And there's a whole study about The Last Jedi and the Russian bot interference with that was like, it was basically Russia coming off of, you know, the Trump stuff and going like, how can we continue to affect American culture and sow dissent and create this divisiveness so that they will fight with each other, and then we can do things like invade the Ukraine and the US will do nothing about it, right? That's the, like, that's what it is. Like that's the level that like the KGB, this sounds like conspiracy theory, but there's, like I said, there's data to support this. That's the level that they're working on, right? Is that they want to create distractions within Western society so that they can continue to do the things that they want to do unabated, right? um and it's, sometimes it's got to do with, you know, Palestine and Israel, and sometimes it's Star Wars. They'll use whatever they can in order to distract. It's ridiculous. But like I look at it and it's like, that is what has happened, and that's what's like, you know, red pilled all these people. Is like, there are very intelligent people out there that are willing to manipulate these systems and these communities in order to gain from it. Where Disney and Lucasfilm are susceptible is in that they have no core ideology currently. They have no one at the center of their company that is saying, I don't give a fuck what the numbers say. I don't give a fuck what the popular prevailing opinion on the internet is. We believe that this is worth standing for, fighting for. This is why we create, right? This is why we make the art that we make. Lucasfilm used to have that with George, and it doesn't anymore. It has pockets of it within Lucasfilm, but it needs to be core. It needs to be the prevailing ideology. I shouldn't say it. I do think it is the prevailing ideology. And the reason why I'll say that, what I'll use to support that, is if you look at the things that Disney doesn't care about, the video games, the novels, the comic books, it's there. It's there. You can see it. You could see it with the High Republic stuff, right? When that writers group, when they put that story group together specifically for the High Republic, and you know, all the backlash of like, they put all of the stuff on the board, and everybody was like, oh, look at this woke garbage. And it's like, yeah, absolutely, there are some progressive ideologies that are up there. They should be. They absolutely should be. We're talking about the Jedi. There should be progressive ideologies up there. But you know what else was up there on that board? And I think Daniel Jose Older was responsible for this, was dinosaurs. Was on the like things that we have to have in the High Republic. Dinosaurs. Right? And it's like, and you know, God bless that group for putting that on the board, because yeah, we do need more dinosaurs in Star Wars. Like, come on. But it's there. Like, it is there. And it is the prevailing ideology, but unfortunately, when it comes to the movies and the TV shows, it gets overridden by the corporate interest, which is fueled by shareholder disgruntlement, at the executive level, right? Like that's what's getting in the way of all of these projects, you know, continuing. So just to bring it all right back into the Acolyte being canceled, and to answer the question that you asked an hour ago. Is this the right decision from a business standpoint? No, it's not, because companies that flourish, the companies that are strong and ride out things like recessions and downturns and all sort of like economic factors, are the companies that have a core ideology. They clearly communicate that core ideology, not through a bunch of fucking marketing bullshit or a submission statement on their website, but through their actions and through the products that they generate, right, and what they put out into the marketplace. Those companies create loyalty, and loyalty is what creates stability in business, in a corporate world. And so right now, these decisions that Disney is making, that Lucasfilm is making, they don't speak to that, right? There is the High Republic era has something to say about politics, about what the Jedi are meant to be, about ideology, about what is right and what is wrong. They are very George in that way. And as much as like we've talked about it, there's too much High Republic shit. I can't keep up with it, so I dropped a lot of it. The people who love it, and it resonates, and that's why, because it does have that stuff at the core of it. It is solid, right? The Acolyte is, to me, the best example of that. They had something to say with it. Leslie Headland had things to say. That's why we were able to do 2-hour episodes on 36 minutes, right? And you look at like everything that What the Force put out, and Sky Talkers and Star Wars Explains, and everybody was generating so much content, and the fan art and the fan fiction, everything that has come out of it, it's been ridiculous, the amount that it's generated. And why did it do that? Because it has a message and it clearly communicates it, and that message is resonating with an audience. If they stayed the course in the long term, that is a greater benefit to the company than this short-term gain ideology that they're currently stuck in. That didn't work. It didn't generate the numbers that we wanted it to. What are those numbers? Those numbers are flawed anyways. Those numbers are accounting for a whole bunch of things. Are you looking at Nielsen ratings? Because Nielsen ratings for streaming literally only account for people watching on television sets in the United States. That's it. Do you know what that means? That means the app is installed on a smart TV, not through a Roku or a Chromecast, not coming through your phone to the TV, installed in the like a piece of software installed onto the TV, generating metrics. That is the only thing that Nielsen looks at in the United States. That is such a narrow band. That is such a myopic perspective on who's watching these shows. It is not representative of real numbers. It is not representative of the audience that show is even intended for, right? Because think about it demographically, and think about how we all interact with stuff. Yes, premiere night, those numbers I was watching on my TV, on the app installed on my TV. When I was watching, we were sort of doing the thing of like, hey, everybody watch, just like put it on the background and just like get the numbers up. It was on my computer. Nielsen doesn't care. It did not account for those numbers. Doesn't even matter to begin with, because I'm in Canada. As if I'm not a direct contributor to that market, and whether or not this show deserves a second season. Just completely disregarded. The UK, completely disregarded. All of Europe, completely disregarded. South America, completely disregarded. That's a continent, by the way, not a country. Africa, another continent. Australia. Asia. The rest of the fucking world. So if Disney is basing any of their decision making off of Nielsen numbers, which is what a bunch of people on the internet are purporting, right? I don't think that they are, to be clear. That's not what I think.
I don't think so either.
They have their own metrics. But a bunch of people online are like, well, look, it's at the bottom of the top 10 for the season finale. Well, first of all, narrow band of what they're looking at. Second, do you know what they're looking at? They're looking at total number of minutes viewed across the entire fucking series. That's the number that Nielsen gives you guys. That's what you're looking at when you're looking at that. What does that mean? Why is The Boys number one in that same time period? Well, The Boys is number one in that same time period because it has longer seasons, right? Because I think they're 10 episodes, right? And it's on season fucking 4. And it's got a tie-in series in order to generate interest. It actually has 2, because it's got the animated one as well, the Diabolical, right? which may have caught some people. Also, it has Invincible, which is not the same product, but definitely a complementary product that maybe you showed up for Invincible and you stayed for The Boys, right?
Mm.
So it has minutes on its viewing. Not Invincible's not accounting for that, but to my point about like when it's in number one for the season finale recently, which it absolutely deserves to be. It was a fucking phenomenal series, right? Season, right? It's been a phenomenal series all the way through. I think like it's top tier. The Boys is fucking awesome. So this isn't throwing shade at it, but it's to say that like the reason why it's in number one and Acolyte's at number 10 is that Acolyte has 8 episodes total. And those episodes are 36 minutes at most. I think the longest one was like 40 minutes. 42 minutes, I think, was the premiere, right? Maybe 47 or something. Somewhere in that range. They're all sub 50 minutes. The Boys episodes are an hour long. I think that there are actually episodes of The Boys that exceed an hour, if I'm not mistaken. I might be thinking of a different show, but in any case, like most episodes of The Boys are like 45 minutes to an hour, right? So just there, if it was 8 to 8, The Boys would still have more minutes if you watch the whole season that week, right? But think about like when a show is doing really well and everybody's saying like, fuck man, this show is great, go watch it, to a bunch of people who haven't seen it yet. And you get a bunch of people coming in season 4 watching the first season, right? Yes, it's going to be in number one if it's a successful show that's generating new viewership off of the new season, which is what happens with streaming models. Look at the success of fucking Suits and White Collar, shows that no one should talk about. I love Suits, by the way. Like Suits is a fantastic show. White Collar, not so much. I have issues with White Collar, but but they generate huge numbers for Netflix because they're like these complete series. They have a bunch of seasons, and so like people get in there, they start watching it. They're procedural ish, but with this great character drama stuff going on. So they're very addictive. They're great for binging, and so people will do that. They binge 3 seasons, and when they binge 3 seasons, the algorithm picks up that they just watched X number of minutes within the last 6 days, and then it starts putting it on the fucking front page. And when it puts it on the front page, new people click on it. When new people click on it, it feeds the cycle. And now all of a sudden Suits is bigger than any other show on Netflix. Even though it like on USA, nobody's fucking watching it when it's on TV, right? Because that's the way that streaming has worked. That's the way that these apps have worked. It's crazy to me, right? Like I can look at this and go like this stuff doesn't make any sense in the way that they're making their decisions, because they're making their decisions like it's TV, not like it's streaming. But they're making the decisions like it's TV based on streaming numbers. And that's where it's like there's this absolute disconnect in the way, in the reality of the situation, and then what people are making decisions off of. Because we don't have transparency into the actual numbers from Disney, we only ever know what they tell us, right? And I mean, they've given us a fair amount of information on the Acolyte, and that information is difficult to parse. It's really difficult to look at it and compare apples to apples based on other TV shows and all that stuff. Again, because there's no transparency. We don't get to see the actual metrics, right? They tell us a viewership number, and then we just take it at that. And it's like, well, how many of those people watched all the way through versus how many people watched the first 5 minutes and dropped, right? How many people watched the first episode, carried through all the way to the end? We have some of that, but not all of it. So because we don't have that, and then Nielsen comes and goes like, well, here's a metric that compares across all of the different platforms. And it's like, well, the platforms behave differently and prioritize things differently, so you are absolutely comparing apples to oranges to fucking bananas to fucking aircraft carriers. Like, it doesn't. Saying that Amazon Prime is the same as Disney Plus is fucking ignorant at best and moronic at most. Right? Like, they're completely different beasts in the way that they're serving product. But again, I know all this because I've worked in software development, right? Like I as a UX designer, I know how we think about these psychologies. So it drives me nuts because I can see that like these executives don't understand this stuff. They are not paying attention to the right things. They are not looking at the right numbers. They are not accounting for any of the fucking false flag shit that's going on the internet. They listen to people like Elon Musk. Like they literally like think that he says smart stuff. So that tells you where they're getting their information from. Um, like it's so fucking broken. So yeah, if Amazon is a good example actually, because Amazon is like, fuck it, we don't care what the sort of like what's being said on the internet. We're gonna make the boys, right? And it's got a fucking message, and the message is super clear. Maybe not as clear as it could have been, but this season for sure. And then this season the numbers were better than they've ever fucking been in season 4, the season that explicitly goes, hey, mega is bad, evil, bullshit, nonsense, you're stupid for following it, right? That season is the season with like the fucking highest numbers. There you go, right? So if Disney stuck with it, if they actually fucking put their money where their mouth is and acted like the things that they purport to value, inclusivity, representation, like queer visibility, which like every year fucking Pride they roll out their merchandise line, although it was not very prominent this year, go figure. um Stand behind that, put these shows out, right? Do another season of Miss Marvel, do another season of The Acolyte, fucking stand behind it, and stand behind your creatives who have something to say when it aligns with what you want your corporate ideology to be, right? Like line those things up, sync those things up. And so there's just this like there's this thing inside Lucasfilm that there's an internal fight there, and I really wish that somehow they could sort that out. But the people who are making the most decisions right now, Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni, don't have that clarity of vision. I hate to say that because I support both of them, and I hate the bullshit of the like, oh, fucking fire Kathleen Kennedy, fire, put Dave Filoni in charge, and then they put Dave Filoni in charge, and now everybody hates Dave Filoni. I hate, I don't want to contribute to that part of the conversation, but I do think that like there's a problem here. Kathleen Kennedy is a phenomenal producer. If you want to get something made, she is the best person to go to get that thing made and get it in front of the most eyes possible, and all of that sort of thing. So I think she's absolutely the right person to be the president of Lucasfilm. I think what they need, I think what Lucasfilm needs is a creative director with a little bit more to say than what I think Dave Filoni has to say. I love Dave's stuff. I love Ahsoka. I love Rebels. Like my favorite Star Wars is Dave's Star Wars. So like it really like it hurts me to say it, right? The thing about Rebels is that like there are some really clear messages in it. There's also some really muddled stuff in there. Like I cannot argue that like against that. Like Rebels is a little bit muddled, right? And Dave works within the system. I think because he comes from animation, like he knows that like it's not going to be the way that I want it to be necessarily. Now he's in a position where it can absolutely be the way that he wants it to be, but I think that there's a little bit of him worrying about the corporate interest more than the artistic merit of it, right? I think he's kind of fallen into that a little bit in this role as he's sort of like grown as a on the executive side, right? Like I think his creative side is still creating great stuff, But I think like that executive side, when like that leadership side, it's not as clear as it could be, right? I also don't know how I like how much he is given that leadership control within the company to make those decisions. Um, but it sucks. It's very clear that Mando is being prioritized over everything else. That sucks because Mando is not nearly as high quality as these other things. It's not nearly as high quality as Andor, Acolyte, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't think it comes even close. Um, and that is coming from somebody who loves The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett and Ahsoka. And we're going to talk about Skeleton Crew. I promise. We're about to switch over to it. I have half an hour left. So we're going to talk about Skeleton Crew. There's not a ton to say about Skeleton Crew other than that we're excited, right? So, because we haven't seen it yet. I think all of this is more important because it all feeds into this, which is that like Skeleton Crew looks fucking awesome. It looks like John Watts has something to say. It looks like he has an artistic vision. There is something there. The fact that it was delayed multiple times has me really worried. It has me really worried that they have messed with John Watts's vision. And like, what's that going to mean for the long term viability of the characters that are being introduced, the ideas that are being introduced, and this stuff that we're really excited about when we see Skeleton Crew? Because I'll tell you this right now, Skeleton Crew is going to get just as much, if not more, flack than Acolyte. Because Skeleton Crew, Acolyte was at least far removed, 100 years from anything fucking Skywalker, right? Skeleton Crew's right in the fucking thick of it, in the shit that everybody wants. More Luke Skywalker slicing through Dark Troopers, right? More of that fucking brain rot garbage, right? And it's like, don't get me wrong, I fucking love Luke Skywalker too. The idea that these people have in their head of Luke Skywalker is not the character Luke Skywalker. They have some weird amalgamation of what they read in novels from 20 years ago that weren't very good and their fucking wet dreams, right? That's what they want to see on screen. And every once in a while that character does it, right? Because what they have in their head syncs up with aspects of the character, but is not the character in totality. And so it's like, that's why you get the reaction that you get at the end of Mando season 2, and then you get the kind of meh reaction in Book of Boba Fett, which, like, that Luke Skywalker in Book of Boba Fett is much closer to the character that I expect to see on screen than the one that we saw at the end of Mandalorian, who just, is a killing machine. Right? So it's like, I really worry that those voices are being accounted for way too much, and that stuff is coming in and affecting the decisions that are being made. It makes me really worried about the Rey movie, and the ways that that's going to be interfered with before it goes into production, and then especially once that first edit comes back and someone like Bob Iger sees it and goes, wait, so the whole movie's about a girl? Right? Or, like, hey, if you're gonna have a sexy brunette in the lead of this film, can we make her a little bit more likable, please? And then they go back and they reshoot a bunch of stuff, and we end up with Rogue One completely turning left in the third act, and Jyn Erso suddenly abandoning everything that she was as a character throughout the first 2 acts of that film, and just being Princess Leia, just saying what Princess Leia would say in that scene when she's in front. So we have to fight for hope. This bullshit. This absolute nonsense. The character that was written, the character that was on screen for the first 2/3 of that movie would have walked into that room and been like, I don't give a fuck what you're all saying. Flipped the table and said, I'm going to Scarif and I'm going to get the plans for this thing. You guys can all cry and piss your pants about it. I'm going to save the galaxy. which I'm pretty sure is what the first draft of that script would have said, because Gary Whitta wrote it. So, like, that's how Gary Whitta approaches a lot of things. That's his attitude. Jyn Erso is a self-insert for Gary Whitta. And they absolutely just like take all the power out of that in the third act of that movie. And I'm so worried that that's what they're going to do with the Rey movie. So whatever message that thing's got that got Daisy Ridley to go, you know what? I'll put up with it. I'll put up with the bullshit. I will put up with the nonsense and the hate and the online garbage that I'm going to have to deal with by coming back to this character that I love, because I love the character and what has been presented to me. This story is worth telling. That got me excited. That was a message that we were being given before the Acolyte came out. And now the Acolyte comes out, and then Disney and Lucasfilm are reacting in this way, and it makes me very worried for that movie. Very, very worried for that movie. Not because of the creatives that are involved, but because of the executive bullshit that I know is going to go on behind the scenes, and that's going to interfere with, I can't remember the name of the director, but with her vision and with Daisy Ridley wanting to be a part of this story and coming back to Star Wars despite everything. If I were John Boyega, who they are clearly trying to get on board with this, right? If I were him, I'd be saying, fuck you guys. Because everything that he complained about after Rise of Skywalker was out and after his job was done, because up until that point, I think he towed the company line because it was part of his contract and it was part of his job, and I don't fault him for it, right? Like, yeah, you got to get out there, you got to promote the movie, you got to get as many people to go see it. It doesn't matter what happened behind the scenes and how upset you are about stuff, right? You're contractually obligated to make those 3 movies. You made those 3 movies. You did your best. You tried to affect them as much as you could. Things didn't go the way that you wanted them to. And, then he comes out and he talks about it. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him one bit. And for him to have watched what happened with Obi-Wan Kenobi and now to watch what happens with the Acolyte, if I were him and they were coming to me and saying, we really want you to come back for this Rey movie, the only person I think that can get him back in that film is Daisy. That's it, is if she was like, I need you to do this in order for us to tell the story that we want to tell, right? I need you back. He would probably do it for her, but I think it's a fight. I think it's a fight. And I don't think Oscar Isaac has any interest at the moment in coming back and playing Poe Dameron again. And that breaks my fucking heart, because he's my 3rd favorite Star Wars character, right? Like I want to see that character back on screen so bad, but what they did to Poe in that last movie, just, it's so gross. And then you feel like they learn the lesson and they come out and they make something like Acolyte, and you're like, yes, great. Or even Bad Batch, right? Which did a lot of really great stuff. But then it's like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? And that's why it's really hard for me to get super excited about Skeleton Crew, despite the fact that the trailer is fucking awesome. So I have talked for an hour and a half, basically, off of one question that you asked, but I've been thinking about it since Monday night. So that's everything that I've been thinking about. Joe, do you have anything to say about anything that I said?
Skeleton Crew looks fun.
Yeah, talk about Skeleton Crew for a minute. Let me rest my vocal cords and have a drink.
No, in all seriousness, I mean, pretty much on the same page. I mean, I might have said it in 3 sentences.
Yeah,
you chose to go another way. Yeah, it sucks. I think it's a waste. I think they really should have given it more of a chance, backed it up a little bit more, but here we are. Also weird, I noticed today they put a few things back. As of yesterday, though, they removed everything Acolyte related from the Disney online shop. And that has me worried that we're going to have a Willow situation where season 2 got canceled, and then all of a sudden they're just going to pull it. It's just going to be gone. And I hope they don't do that. I feel like they might not do that because it's Star Wars and there's a lot more I guess, demand for Star Wars than there was for Willow, but that did make me nervous. And like I said, today there were 4 things were back, but as of yesterday, if you searched the Acolyte, nothing was coming up.
Yeah, but
And
if
it
you
just seems like everything was
searched
gone.
Andor, nothing was coming up either. So, right, like I don't think that paints the entire picture, but I get what you're saying. There wasn't that
It just
much to
made me a little
begin with.
nervous.
But yeah, absolutely. No, I
Right,
and
but
I think for
but it
good
existed.
reason.
It was
Yeah.
there, like
Yeah.
the Black Series figures. I mean, I don't know if they had them for pre-order, but Black Series figures existed. There was a ton of not a ton, but there was a decent amount of like shirts and sweaters, and I feel like there was
the
like a
print
hat
on
or
that
two.
stuff
Like
and-
there was stuff there, and now there is only 4 things there. And yesterday there was none. So it was just like, what is happening with this right now? Like what exactly is going on? But I don't know. It makes me nervous that it might just disappear one day. And honestly, I don't want to get into another like tangent because I would like to also talk about skeleton. I mean, like you, I don't really have a ton to say about it, but man, this only reinforces my opinion that physical media is important. And as great and as convenient as streaming is, physical media, if they decide it's gone, it's gone. And that thing that you paid for is not there anymore. And this I feel the same way about digital games that you buy. Like, I know it's annoying, it takes up space. I know you have to get up to plug in the other game. Like, what a travesty. But like, man, it just forces my paranoia that in the flip of a switch, the thing that you love, your comfort movie, your comfort shows, your comfort games, can just be gone. And I love Steam. My Steam library is enormous because when I don't have a CD-ROM drive, I can't play games physically on PC. But I don't know what it is, man. Nintendo, PlayStation, if I can get them physical, I get them physical. And it's exactly for this reason. But yeah, neither here nor there. I feel like you and I have talked about physical media before. Yeah, Skeleton Crew. I mean, look, the last time you and I spoke about it, I voiced my concern that, you know, child actors in general are hit or miss. Nothing against them at all. I don't think the reaction that most child actors have to deal with, especially in the last 20 years, is acceptable. Like, it's not okay to bully a child. It's not okay to bully anybody because they were part of an art project that you don't like, or you feel so strongly that they didn't do a good job or whatever. Not okay. But that said, I do think there is a point to the notion that child actors are obviously not as experienced as I don't want to use the phrase adult actor because it has a different context to it, but an adult who is an actor, someone who has more experience and has been doing it for a longer period of time, has a different sense of sensibilities than a child would, whatever. So because of that, I'm a little maybe cautiously optimistic because it's not apprehensive. I'm gonna watch the show. I feel like will probably enjoy it. It's Star Wars. I will find something to enjoy from it. But arguably not super excited that the main leads are children. That said, though, there are those lightning in a bottle, projects where you get the right kids together and it's magic, right? Like Goonies, Stranger Things, the new Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. Is that the name of it?
Yes.
Like, those kids were awesome. Like, all of these kids were awesome. And you get the right kids together, you get the right chemistry, and yeah, you got your lightning in a bottle. And I don't know that I've seen it yet in the trailer. It's definitely not stiff or anything. Like, it's everything we've seen is believable. And it's kind of impossible to tell what the chemistry is going to be. But like, just the fact that, like, yeah, we're getting Star Wars suburbs, like, that's fun. The things that we're seeing look fun. So I am excited for a Goonies like Stranger Things like, Ghostbusters Afterlife like
Yeah,
adventure of
yeah,
these kids kind of like literally taking their first steps into a larger world, right? Um, I'm excited for that premise, but I'm still a little guarded in my expectations, if that makes
sure,
sense.
sure.
So
I mean, I
that's
think
where
that's
I'm
a
at.
good. I think that's a good spot to be in. I think measuring your expectations is always a good
Hmm.
idea. Because when you do that, when you keep it tempered, then there's really only room to go up. So,
Hmm. No, yeah,
um,
of course.
when we go in with incredibly high expectations, then we generally only set ourselves up for disappointment. So, yeah, I think that that's fair. We haven't seen a ton, to be fair, but what we have seen does make me hopeful and positive about the performances that we're going to get from these kids. I think more than that, John Watts is a very competent director, and especially when it comes to telling these types of stories, as we've talked about before. When we talked about, we first got those initial images and we talked a lot about this. I John Watts did the Spider-Man, the MCU Spider-Man trilogy, right? And when they started, those actors were fairly young, and he got really great performances out of them. Um, I still think actually like some of the best performances out of those characters are in Homecoming. Um, and yeah, so I look at that part of it and I go, I'm pretty confident that we're in good hands here, right? Um, and that it'll be all right. I I I am so excited for new stuff in Star Wars. I always am. I mean, that's where that is where I get amped up. As I always say, what do I want to see next? Something that surprises me. Like take me on a ride. That's what Star Wars is about. I want to explore the galaxy. I don't want to retread the the stuff that we've already, the paths that we've already gone down. This is the thing. The movies exist. They exist. We have them. The original trilogy exists. We've got it. Yeah, I want more stories with those characters. Don't get me wrong. I love more stories with those characters. Because I love those characters. But I want new stories with those characters to explore new aspects of those characters. That's why I like The Last Jedi. That's why I like what we get to see with Luke in that. That's why I like Luke's scenes in Book of Boba Fett, because Luke's scenes in Book of Boba Fett expand the mistakes that Luke is making with his creation of his new Jedi Order, right? Like his attempt at creating a Jedi temple is, we know, doomed because we know where it ends. And to see him mess up so much with Grogu to me, it's like, this is very informative, right? Like this people will say a lot of the time, oh really, we really need a series about Luke and Ben Solo so that we can fill in the gaps to make it so that we can understand where Luke is at in The Last Jedi. It's like, well, I don't think you guys are going to like that, because I think Luke's going to make a lot of mistakes. I think that's actually kind of implied in what happened, even just in The Force Awakens. But anyways, what I want to do is I want to go off into the new parts of the galaxy and explore that stuff, and see things that we've never seen. And Skeleton Crew seems to have that, right? And there are touch points. There's familiarity that we need to have. I love the way that the trailer ends with the key. It's a very Pirates of the Caribbean reference, actually. The ride specifically, not just the movies. It's played out in the first movie with the dog with the key, right, and them trying to get out of the cell, um, which is a nod to old pirate movies and stuff, right? So I love it. But what I love about it is the way that it is setting up that Jude Law, like for the general audience, it's setting up that Jude Law is a Jedi. He's not. He's not. Like, let's just
Yeah, I
go
don't
ahead
think
and
he
call
is
that right
either.
now.
Yeah.
The way that he takes the hood down,
Yeah.
that is an actor's choice, and
Very Haja. Yeah.
that choice is very Haja. That's a great way to put it. That's very Haja. It is absolutely. Oh, that's a con man. That
Hmm.
he's a con man. He is pretending to be a Jedi. I don't know how he did it. Maybe he does actually have
Magnets.
the Force, right? But I mean, Haja did it with
Maybe.
magnets. I said it last week, right? We just rewatched Obi-Wan Kenobi. One of my favorite lines in Obi-Wan Kenobi, but maybe in all of Star Wars. That is definitely not magnets. You are definitely not using magnets. It's so good when Reva is like using the Force on Haja, and he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you are definitely using the Force on me right now." So good. Haja needs to come back. Where's the demand for Haja's return? I want to see.
I mean, that's the reason they
Haja
canceled Acolyte, is to like create the Haja show
to create
in its place.
Haja a Star Wars story.
Yeah.
It's Haja Star Wars in quotes, like with quote marks around it, a Star Wars story. Yeah, man, I want to dive deep into this stuff. I really want Jude Law's character, whose name is like almost, the character's name is like Jad or something like that. I absolutely want him to be. He's obviously not a Jedi, and I want that to be super clear about it. I would love it if he's one of these kids from the path, right? That was like rescued by Quinlan or somebody of that sort, or maybe we get a nod to Cal Kestis or something, or like just to the Fallen Order Survivor games, right? Maybe they reference Seer or something. That was rescued, but then went off, into this corner of the galaxy to hide from the Empire. And he absolutely has a gift with the Force, and he is using the Force to bring those keys to him. And he knows what the Jedi are, but he only knows from like third hand accounts. And so like he's gonna run a con on these kids that he is a Jedi, because whatever treasure they're after, he also wants, right? But then through the course of it, he's gonna like the Tin Man, he'll find his heart because of these kids. I can't wait. I'm very excited for this show. And maybe my hopes are set too high right now, but I love the 3 Spider-Man movies that John Watts made. I am heartbroken that he is not the one making Fantastic Four, because when that was the case, I was very adamant that Spider-Man was going to be in that movie, right? That we were going to get that connection between those characters. I think that's the reason why he's not making that movie. I think like that Marvel wanted to go a different way with the multiverse stuff. So when he was initially developing that it was more in the MCU main universe. And then they made the pivot of like, what if this was more of a multiverse thing, and we established these guys are from another world and all of that stuff. And I think he wanted to do something more along that lines. And then it was like, well, I'm going to work on this Star Wars thing anyways, and went off to do Skeleton Crew. So it's like, I guess I have a lot of expectation myself and a lot of hopes pinned on that, because I was really looking forward to his Fantastic Four. So for him to leave Marvel, where he made these things that I love so much, to go over here to do Star Wars, this other thing that I love even more, I'm like, you better make this one good. It better be good, John. Because I'm like, you didn't make Fantastic Four. I'm like, Fantastic Four looks like it's going to be an awesome movie, so I'm not worried about that part of it. But it's like, but the Fantastic Four movie that I wanted, that has Peter Parker showing up to join the Fantastic Four, and then being like, well, you got to take off your mask, and him being like, well, I don't do that anymore, and then being like, what are you talking about, and all of that. I was really hopeful for that, but I want, this Goonies, Stranger Things in space with Star Wars stuff. And like the fact that we're seeing in the trailer that there's like creatures that are inspired by characters from Captain EO at Disneyland. Like John Watts is he's working on a level that I think that we are going to be able to get behind. Yeah, man, like the skeleton robot that's on the ship, right? Who's basically like you can kind of get the vibe that he's going to be like part of their crew, sort of helping them. They're going to get him up and running, but he's going to be kind of like analogous, right? Like he's a reanimated skeleton. Like the droid looks like a skeleton, right? So it's like it's the idea of like they're on a ghost ship and a skeleton is going to be their helmsman, basically, right? Like this reanimated skeleton, so like very Pirates of the Caribbean vibe on that. And then like this weird like owl dude that's gonna, you know, guide them along their way. Nice potential Zelda reference in there with that one.
Yeah, I like
um
him. He's cute.
yeah, like it's just like everything that we've seen from a design perspective, it has me very excited for the potential of this story. And then just, you know, we've gotten a lot of Star Wars stories for kids. We haven't actually gotten that many about kids. And having my two youngins that I want to experience Star Wars with. I mean, I watched the trailer with Kara and she was like, yeah, I'm in. Cassie was like, I don't know. What they both agree on, and everybody agrees on, is that Neil is all of our favorites, and all the Neil merchandise. Um, but yeah, I'm excited to watch this with my girls, with Cara specifically, because she's 8. As a matter of fact, today is her birthday, so happy birthday to her. She's not listening to this, but she won't. But happy birthday to Cara, and
Happy birthday.
yeah, she's officially 8 years old now, so she is officially in the target demo, 8 to 13 for Star
That's it.
Wars,
Big
right?
kid. She's a big kid now.
Yeah.
That's it.
And yeah, we're going to Disneyland. We're going to build a lightsaber, and she was with me when I built mine, but she's going to build her own this time. That's what, when we talked about like, hey, like, what are you thinking? What do you want to do? Because you have to reserve that stuff in advance, right? And so it was like, is there anything that you want to do that we will reserve in advance? One of the things is building a lightsaber, and she was like, yes, I do. I want to do that. She's wanted to do it since I built mine. So we're going to go do that and hang out at Galaxy's Edge. And she's excited to go on Rise of the Resistance again and fly the Millennium Falcon with Cassie and all that stuff, and see Rey and Chewie and who she considers her friends. Like she's like, it's like we're going to visit old friends, and it's, you know, that's what I want Star Wars to be more than anything, is this thing that I can share with my family, and my friends who are family. Um, so yeah, like I don't know, like more than any one character coming back and being a badass, which is what I think is at the top of most of these people's lists, is that it's either Vader or Luke Skywalker. That's all they want to fucking see, are these two characters swinging lightsabers. And it's like, I just want to be able to enjoy this with the people that I love. Like I don't understand why that's so hard for some of these people. Is like what are you doing? Why are you part of this community? Why are you part of this fandom? Why are you a Star Wars fan? And it's like, for me, that's what it, like, it lights something up inside me, and I want to share that with the people that I care about. That's it. If it does that, then we did it. And I think that's why the Acolyte was so fucking special, because it was finally something that Crystal was lit up from the inside by, right? Like it got in her and it resonated, and it turned that light on. And I I want that. I want that. And I want that for the girls, and I want that for my friends, and I want to be able to share that. I want other people to feel the way I feel. I think that's what these other people are also after. I just don't think that they understand that what they're doing is counter to that goal. Like, you aren't going to get it by trying to enforce these ideas that you've got in your head. You're going to get that by going in with an open heart. Like, that's the only way. And I promise you, trust me, it is so much more fulfilling to feel that through somebody else than by having your own wishes fulfilled. I Obi-Wan Kenobi is a great series, and I love it so much, and it's very high up for me. And Star Wars Rebels is at the top, and all of that. The experience of watching Acolyte week to week with Crystal better than the experience of watching Obi-Wan Kenobi week to week by myself at midnight, by a long shot, immeasurable. Better than watching Bad Batch, better than watching Star Wars Resistance or Rebels or any of that stuff that I watched by myself. Right. And obviously I come together with all of you guys and talk about it and stuff. But like that experience of sitting every week and watching Acolyte with Crystal was amazing. And I wish that for everybody that loves Star Wars, is to sit and watch somebody that you love fall in love with Star Wars the way that you have. Because that's better than anything. It's better than anything. And the people that need to hear this the most are the people that are not listening to this podcast, and that sucks. That breaks my heart. But it's just the way that the world is. I don't know. Hopefully there's like one or two, hopefully there's somebody hate listening to this podcast that hears me say that and goes, wait a second, maybe I have been thinking about this wrong. Maybe I've been approaching this from the wrong perspective. But that's it. Speaking of Crystal and the girls, Crystal and Cassie are home, and so it's going to get noisy in here. So I'm going to wrap it up.
Okay.
I'm going to wrap it up.
All right.
I think that was the right note to wrap it up on.
Yeah.
We're going to be off at least next week, maybe for 2 weeks. And then we'll be back. And I don't know what we're going to talk about next. I will say this. If you're not subscribed over on Rebel Cells, go do that, because we will have an episode. We'll have a few episodes of Rebel Cells coming in the next little bit, because we've got Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy coming. And I did, when it was announced, I did talk to Bobby Moynihan on Twitter, and he agreed to come on the podcast. So Bobby Moynihan will be coming on Rebel Cells within the next month to talk about Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy, which looks like it's going to be fucking awesome as well. And I can't wait. But Joe and I think Kyle wants to be a part of it as well. I don't know what his schedule is like right now with his new fresh one, his little youngling at home. But but hopefully he'll have time to jump in and talk about Lego Star Wars as well. So we'll be back on Rebel Cells for that really soon. Yeah, I mean, like, I will probably want to come back and talk about everything that we did at Disneyland in a couple of weeks. So
also Star Wars Outlaws comes out next week too.
Oh yeah, dude. You know what? That'll be it. Like, so I'm gonna say it right now. I'm just gonna call it. Next 2 weeks, no episodes of Force Perspectives. We'll be back in September with a Star Wars Outlaws review, because I think that'll give you and I time to at least play through the main story. And then we can do a review of the main story and like sort of our impressions of the game. So that'll probably be the next episode. And Perfect 10 is coming back in September. The first episode is going to be with me and Marie Claire Gould from What the Force. We're going to talk about Reboot, my favorite TV show of all time, because it is it's the 30th anniversary this year. It's hard to, every time I think about it, it's like, that can't be right, but it is. It's the 30th anniversary of Reboot. And so, we're doing an episode of Perfect 10 to kick off the new season about that. And then the next episode was going to be with Missy, and we're going to talk about Prey. I have to like nail that down with her, but she wants to talk about it. So, I'm fairly confident that that's it. So yeah, stay tuned to like all of our channels. Make sure that you're, you can also, here's a tip. You can follow us on Patreon without contributing to the Patreon. And so everything that goes up on Patreon, I do as early access. There are very few things that stay exclusive. And that's really at the moment, just the stuff from our pledge drive that's like stayed exclusive just for Patreon supporters. But everything else that goes up on Patreon eventually goes to the general public. And so if you want to like stay up to date with everything and know when stuff is coming out, that's actually a really great way to do it. And you can do that for free. So that's patreon.com/ThunderQuack to do that. And that's the best way to know, when stuff is announced for things like Perfect 10. But I need to, like, in the next couple of weeks, firm up everything for the full season, because we're going to do 10 episodes like over 10 months. And I'm trying to nail down exactly what each of those episodes are, so that I can let everybody know in advance that, like, hey, this is when this is what the episodes are about and when they're coming this season for Perfect 10. So I just have a couple more that I need to, like, nail down, and then I'm gonna put that out at the beginning of September. So look forward to that. If you want to contribute over on Patreon, $5 a month gets you early access to this podcast, and it gets you off the record, where Joe and I talk about everything that's not Star Wars. And it's going to get you early access to Perfect 10, as well as the Perfect 10 pop quiz. So lots of really great stuff over there. Awesome stuff planned for the next little bit. So that's one of the reasons why this break is really important, because I need to line some of that stuff up, prep some things, but also just have a little bit of a break before September is crazy, because we've got Rebel Cells, Force Perspectives, and Perfect 10 all coming out in that month. So look forward to it. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Thank you for listening to my hour and a half rant about corporate structure and Bob Iger and all of that stuff. We'll catch you guys on the next episode, where we'll most likely, I'm pretty sure, 90% positive, we're going to talk about Star Wars Outlaws. So see you guys on the next one. Follow Force Perspectives on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ForcePOV. And join us on Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord. Support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/thunderquack to get early access to episodes, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast service, or buy merch at store.thunderquack.com. Force Perspectives is a part of the ThunderQuack Podcast Network.